to another Coffee with Samso, where we now summarising up the special series we've done with Blackstone over the last month. We're here at the UWA Club here in Crawley at the University of Western Australia, and today we've got the man himself, Scott Williamson, back with us just to give us a general view of all the videos we've done and what kind of impact. Scott, welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. It's been a great series and really keen to really sum it up today and talk about it. What was a great series, so thank you.
Look, the whole idea was that we just showcase each part of the business, the Blackstone business. And I think in some ways you guys have tackled the issue of getting the message out very, very well over, I think, 2 years since we started talking. What's the feedback you've had since we've done this series?
Yeah, I think it's been good. Plenty of great feedback. I think a lot of people like the different parts of the business. So some people might be more focused on the ESG credentials, and then so they can get a bit deeper dive in that area. Or some people might be more technical, and then they like to understand more around the Tony Tang or Andrew Strickland type interview. And some people are really interested in social media, and so I think it tailors for the different audiences. It also, but most importantly, it showcases the talent we've got in the company. But yeah, some really good feedback and all very positive, and a lot of interest in the series. I
think that the highlight for me was the fact that to deliver the story in today, you had, like, we talked to Tessa about the branding and the marketing and things like that. But the key was the ESG component. I think that's where it's sort of, to me, it linked everything and how the business should work, and it actually ties together everything in terms of getting the message across to everyone. And then the ESG component, although Anna was one video, Tony and Andrew sort of linked that together in how they can deliver their part of it, the downstream and upstream. What's your feedback when you talk to the market about the Blackstone story corporately? Do they look at it with sort of caution because you're in Vietnam and things like that?
Yeah, so I think the investors are aware that ESG is really a big part of our story, but I still don't think we're at that point where people are seeking us out because of our green nickel credentials and our highest level of ESG compliance. So unfortunately, as much as the investors are saying that they want us to move in that direction, I think we're really leading the way, and it's not really driving where people put their money yet, particularly the retail investors. But the institutions obviously a little bit different. They like Fidelity. I think one of the main reasons we were able to attract Fidelity is because of that ESG angle and the fact that we were really focused on good compliance, and particularly when you're investing in Asia, it's important to be focused on strong corporate governance, and that's why we were able to attract Fidelity. So yeah, the ESG angle is very much ingrained in the way we operate, but I still don't think it's what the investors are looking for yet. But I think that will come over time. So once people realise that we are one of the only green nickel operators in the world, I think that's when people will realise that that's what really drives our story, and people will then be attracted to that. At the moment, I think they're just attracted to nickel, but over time we'll find more investors that are actually after green nickel.
I think when we talk to Tony and Andrew, I guess you can bundle them or basket them into the technical aspects of the business. It really became apparent that and I've been saying this a lot, that your ore body is not a problem. Your supply of nickel ore is not a problem. It's the implementation and getting it to the market that people sort of say, well, can they do it? Can they deliver it, right? Because you're drilling. I think the last time we spoke in Sydney, you had 12 rigs or something like that, doing 24/7, if I'm not correct, something like that. So obviously you're not. If you're doing that, means you've got something there to do 24/7 drilling on, right? So it was never a concern. But I think a lot of people seem to feel like, can these guys deliver? And I think in some ways, Tony and Andrew's message was quite compelling in that sense.
Yeah, so because we've got a strong story, we've been able to attract great talent like the entire team that were in the series, and those guys like Tony Tang, for instance, they've worked all through the industry. He came to us and said, "I want to be a part of this," and I can see where you're heading with it. I understand the technology. I understand the industry. I want to be a part of what you're doing because you're at the forefront of this movement towards electrification, and I want to be a part of that. And so we've been able to attract people that aren't just there for the pay packet. They're there for something much bigger, and that's the ability to create a future for our children, our grandchildren. That's really what has been attracting this talent, because I can't compete with BHP and Rio, who pay a lot better than I do, but I can offer more than just a pay packet. And yeah, so we've got some great talent. We've now been able to engage some of the biggest names in the industry, Wood Group, also ALS. We've announced just this week. So we've attracted the biggest names in hydromet, and they're now part of our team. So we've got a great team that we're being able to attract. We're still pinching ourselves that Wood want to work with us. Wood's the biggest name in this space, and they wanted to work with Little Blackstone, and so we're pretty proud of the team we're pulling together, particularly on that technical front, because it is technically there's a challenge. It's even though we're using technology that's been around since the 1960s, it's the first time as an industry that we've taken nickel concentrate all the way through to 811. So although we're bringing all those technologies that have been used before, it's the first time we've pulled them all together for this particular purpose.
You know, going back to Tony and Andrew, when I did the video over that time, I could see that these guys sort of are really ingrained in trying to do it. They really have this belief, as he just said, that he actually approached you guys. I always have a vote of confidence when people can analogize what they do with simple stories, like he was saying. It's like blending coffee. Mate, if you can, that confident that it's there in your head, it's like a well-groomed, like experienced chef who can just open your cupboard and go, oh, I'll just knock this up. Whereas I think if I look at my cupboard, I'll go, oh geez, I'll just have 2-minute noodles because that's the easiest, right? Whereas these guys can knock something up in that fashion. And Andrew, in his way, is saying, when he's talking about, you know, the fact that you are going zero emission, and you should actually plan that way, because in 5 years, you if you don't plan for it, you'll just do what you've started with. If you start with diesel, you're going to end up with diesel, because it's just too easy to do that. So I think that's a really interesting point where, you know, it gives me that confidence that, you know, as you said, you know, those big names are now joining you, and it's not an easy feat, right? To get an end product. Nobody wants to be associated with a failure in that sense. With the market and the people you talk to, the investors and all that, what's their confidence level of that market in 5-10 years time? What are they telling you? That, you know, is it happening, or do they feel like you're on the right track?
Yeah, I think if I go back to when I first started talking to the engineering firms in particular, I actually got laughed out of the boardroom. Like they literally said, "What are you doing that for? The hydromet space is done. It's too risky. It's blown up too many companies. Don't do it. You're crazy." And then 3 years later, they all want to work with us. So, because we were 2 or 3 years ahead of where the industry was heading, and so we knew that we were going to get to this point where the whole industry is moving towards battery chemical products, and and in 3 to 5 years' time, this will all play out. It's only just now that our peers have actually realised that we're on the right track, and that goes from our nickel mining peers. A lot of them haven't even started this process, all the way through to those engineering firms. So, and we're going to the next step. So our peers are all looking, okay, well, let's get into the downstream, and we've gone to the next step and said, okay, let's produce the cleanest and greenest downstream products in the industry. So we're already on to the next goal, which is zero carbon from day one. So we've got this ability to go net zero from day one. And the industry is still trying to work out how do we get into downstream.
And is Vietnam receptive of what you guys are trying to do? As a community, as a government, are they embracing, seeing you guys as the leading example and giving them that focus in the country?
Yeah, so Vietnam's an interesting country because they've watched countries like China, South Korea and Japan become these powerhouse of Asia. They're the major sort of countries, and they've basically, it's very clear that they want to be the next one of those, I suppose, big, successful commercial countries. So they're very focused on that. They have a very similar conglomerate to the South Koreans and Japanese. So they've really modelled it on the South Korean Japan sort of model, which is big conglomerates and that really are really powerful and that's why when we talk to the government, they can see the bigger picture. So the fact that the Vin Group, which is a major conglomerate in Vietnam, is building electric vehicles in Hai Phong that needs nickel from our mine and our refinery. The fact that we can pull that all together in a region that's has some of the best foreign direct investment numbers in the world. Like I've said, just LG and Samsung have put $20 billion into this region already. So they know that if they open it up to business, good companies will come and build jobs, and that's what we're seeing. So they've been really supportive of that, particularly now that they can see that the nickel in the ground goes all the way through to electric vehicle in country. It's exactly what they wanted, and that's what the previous owners didn't do. So the previous owners were shipping nickel concentrate to China, and we've come in and said, no, we won't do that. We'll upgrade it, add value, create jobs, and hopefully that nickel goes all the way through to a local electric vehicle. It's a great story for Vietnam. How could they not like that?
I think that's a very, very smart strategy, right? Because you're embracing embracing the country, and Southeast Asia is a region that's going to be a big player now that we've gone past the China growth, and then the next growth will come from there. Look, when I was talking to Anna about the ESG, and one of the things we said was that ESG is now for the companies itself. They say, okay, we'll do this, we'll do that, but I think down the road, even the guy who sells the part may be having to consider ESG, saying my part came from so and so, it's clean and everything else, and there's this chain, like a blockchain, that has to be covered. From your guys, when you talk about green nickel, green mining, and everything else, there's two aspects. Obviously, Andrew started talking about electrification of the mining fleet and everything, but the power on that side being hydropower and things like that. I mean, can you give us a picture? Because I know I've got associates who have a lot of hydropower businesses in Laos and things. I think Vietnam also is a big player in hydro. Is that true?
Yeah, we've got two of the largest hydropower plants in Southeast Asia. So one is Son La, which is the mine is already hooked into. One is Hua Bin, which is the next one down the river. And so we've got abundant supply of hydroelectric power. So that's great, which is good for our Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions. Our biggest issue is Scope 3 emissions, like you said. So all of the reagents that we bring in, all of the ingredients that come into our process have emissions associated with them. So the kickoff meeting with Wood the other day, one of the largest engineering firms in the world, we said, have you counted carbon before? And they said no. And so we're leading the way, and we're saying, Wood, you're going to have to count the carbon on everything that comes into this refinery. And they said, yep, great, we love it, we'll be a part of that. But as an industry, we've never done that.
Mm.
So we're leading the way with counting carbon on our Scope 3 emissions into our refinery. It's not being done.
Mm.
And so that our study will include all of that detail. We're very focused on a net zero outcome from day one. So like you said with this, Andrew, and Andrew's big on the studies and making sure the studies start with that as the goal, as net zero from day one. What do we have to do? Count all the Scope 3 emissions as soon as we can. Get everything onto electric equipment from day one. Mm. It's all out there. The technology's there. So why wouldn't you do it? But the problem is we go to the mining engineers and they say, oh, we've never done it. So we'll just do it. Get it done. And because we're not going to do it any other way. And so the mining industry's been a little bit reluctant to take on technology that we have to. If we don't go to net zero, we're out of business. So we have to take on all the technology that's already there. The electrification of mining fleet, it's there. So just do it.
It's very interesting when we talk about that, and you said that the reluctance of industry to embrace it. But when Andrew was talking about electrification of vehicles, he's using the same idea as the what they're doing in Europe with the electric cars and stuff. And I started realizing that if you ever wanted to electrify your fleet in a controlled environment, the best place to do it is in the mine, because you don't have any outside factors. You don't have to worry about pedestrian, because you can control all that, right? So to set all that up, like trams, if you had a tram system, for example, not that you would, you can control that, you can build that, and it's there, right? It's a limited area. You don't have to, you have that set distance or meterage that you have to build that system, not that I have to stretch it for that because I've got to account for the other parts of the community, whereas yours is just a mine. And that's when it occurred to me, well, this is very possible, because at that time Andrew was saying that they're looking at it, it's not done deal, but I'm thinking, well, if ever there was a place that you could do it, that's the best place, right? Yeah,
the underground mine, so I've spent a bit of time in underground mines, and they're dirty places, and a lot of it's because of the diesel fleet. So the fact that we're not moving quicker into that space is disappointing, because we're not just affecting the environment, we're affecting our underground miners. Diesel particulate matter is a major issue in underground mining, and as an industry we need to move towards electrification of underground mining fleet quicker than we are, because it's not acceptable. The technology's there, and then now it's a cost thing, so it's a capital versus operating cost, but everyone's set up their mines with diesel fleet. So to change it out it's a large capital investment. We obviously don't have that problem, because from day one we'll put the extra capital in. So it's a no-brainer for underground mining. Diesel particulates are affecting our underground miners, and they have since we started mining underground. So get on with it as an industry, because it's not good for our people, and it's obviously not good for the environment.
I mean, I did a coffee with Samso on this particular topic as well, and that's when I realized that, hell, we've had 20, 30 years of this kind of stuff, and we've been out, the guys who are working there has been exposed to all this. It's like saying that asbestos is still okay, or and not wearing face masks while you're drilling with all the silica flying everywhere is okay, but it's not, right? In the sense of getting that message out, obviously, we come back to the first episode where we talked about social media and getting the message out with Tessa and the branding. My pet peeve with this industry is that this is the only industry where we don't brand, we don't send a message, right? And I always tell people, every day we're branding to the kids, because we want the kids to follow us. That's a form of branding. How is how's the response that you're getting when, I remember when we first had this conversation, How was it then? Like you say, hey, we need to do this. Obviously, that was the message because you're the most public face on LinkedIn, right? So how was there any pushback, anything like that? What was the response?
Yeah, so I remember when we first started on this journey around the same time, and I could see that you had the right idea. You really wanted to push it into the social media channels, and that's exactly what we've done as well at Blackstone. So when I first started in the role, from day one, I rang my little brother and said, can you teach me how to tweet? He's 5 years younger, and it was funny because I remember doing my first tweet for Blackstone and all excited and a bit nervous, and then nothing. It was crickets. And I realised, well, I don't have any followers, so no one's actually saw that. Yeah. And I was so excited and nervous about it. But now obviously we've grown it to something much bigger. But it was a real focus of mine from the day one that I started in this role, is that I need to learn how to tweet, and I need to get onto LinkedIn. At the time, I was probably on LinkedIn once every 6 to 12 months. Now I'm a daily user. The other one was Facebook. I hadn't been on Facebook for 10 years. So I was definitely not that way inclined. Yeah. But I knew that this was the way the industry was heading, and I knew that it was the cheapest and best way to build a brand was some of these platforms, particularly LinkedIn. I think that was the one that really surprised me. I used to rock up in those early days at a conference and everyone would be like, oh, you're the LinkedIn guy. And I was like, I don't really spend that much time on there, but the algorithms work so well that the value that you get for the time that you put into it is phenomenal. It's the best that I've seen. So yeah, I'll spend maybe half an hour on it, and I'm the LinkedIn guy. It's like, oh, this is great. I'll keep doing this. And so, but I think you're right. As an industry, we don't brand anywhere near well enough, and so the other thing that we haven't really done well is we now need to brand ourselves as a employer of choice, and because we've focused on investors, and we're now looking to move that towards seeking talent, because we've got a great story, but a lot of the talent that we're trying to attract doesn't know about it, because they might not be an investor in ASX penny stocks. So why would they know about us? And so we haven't done well enough on that front, and we're really going to push into that. Another good story is Tony Tang actually won a marketing package at the footy at the Optus Stadium one day, and we had Blackstone logos on the scoreboard, and it was a great, exciting night. And that was something that we'd never do and never thought of doing. But that week we had 100,000 hits on the website, and no one goes to the website. Obviously, everyone on the ASX goes to the ASX platform or ComSec. 100,000 hits on the website was like, wow. Maybe there's something in this branding. Obviously, we can't afford to do that too much, but bigger groups do. Like the larger players in the industry do a lot of branding because they can afford it. But our best branding is social media, and it's cheap and it works, and it gets the name out there. So yeah, I think we've built a good brand from an investor perspective. We now need to build a brand from an employer of choice perspective.
Because I think with the website, everyone, I mean, I've been associated with websites since probably 95 when I started sort of consulting. So you had a landing page for someone to go, oh, who are you? And people would still ask for brochures. Now, I'm sure all the meetings, just send me the digital form, or I'll download it from somewhere. Now, the website now is like the go-to place, right? Everybody, you mentioned something, everyone goes to Google and types in Blackstone. And your website is the first port of call. It's like the airport. Like the tourist comes in and goes, oh, fantastic airport. Great feeling, right? It's the same kind of thing. But still, to this day, that driving people to the website is still not a big thing for us. But we're in the market of selling, right? Every ASX stock is about selling. I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I'm all this kind of stuff. But we don't see that drive, do we?
No. And nowhere near like we should, and nowhere near the way that the other industries do it. And it's really sad, and that's probably why mining gets a bad rap, because we don't actually promote anywhere near enough all the good things that we bring. And I think this movement towards ESG compliance is really going to help that. But we've been doing the same things as an industry, these great things that we do in ESG. ESG is just a new way of explaining what we've already done, we've been doing for 10 or 20 years, but we haven't been talking about it. So now it's time to really talk about the benefits of mining, and the Minerals Council of Australia has been great at that. And so as an industry, we need to come together, and the majors are trying, but I think it's got to go all the way through. But it also comes to just your conversations at the barbecue on the weekend. If someone is anti-mining, pull them up and say, no, this is what we do, and this is all the great that we bring, and where do you think the minerals in your iPhone come from? Like, I think
the car that you drove.
Yeah, it comes back to just sort of being crusaders ourselves as mining people, and saying, hang on, we're a pretty important part of your life.
I think in some ways, I had a conversation with John Ronsky yesterday, and we were just talking about the exploration industry as a whole, why we think that there's a good growth and longevity and stuff. And the key he mentioned, and I think it's really true, is that this zero emission is driving all this, because there's a need for us to move there. And it's the likes of yourself, the Blackstones of this world, to drive that zero emission even more, because that's your day-to-day thing. So if all the mines stop using diesel, it's a big change in the industry, right? So there's that zero emission is driving all this, and a lot of people say, oh, look, the ESG is just going to add cost, and yeah, probably, but I think the cost is not that much, because I think like you said, we've already been doing all this. It was just never in a basket called ESG. We were already doing it. So, and I was talking to someone, it's maybe it was $10 then, and you think, oh, it'll be $55 now, but I think it's more like $15, $17 difference. The increase in cost is not as big as people would perceive. Would you agree?
Well, I'd actually go further and say, obviously it's going to add to your capital costs, but once you've sunk the capital, the operating costs will come down, and that's where it becomes a no-brainer and unacceptable not to be looking at it, because the cost of capital is so low at the moment. Why wouldn't you sink a bit of capital to drop your operating costs? So any miner that's not looking at electrification of fleet is not actually doing the right thing by their shareholders, because it will benefit your operating costs. It will have some capital required, but the cost of capital at the moment is so low. Get it in there. It's actually the opposite. The productivity of electrification, and we know that because the Tesla vehicles outperform all other ICE vehicles. So that's a case in point, and that the exact same thing will happen all the way through industry, and particularly in the mining industry, where productivity is so important.
I think the electric vehicle goes to 100 a lot faster than your normal car, right?
Yeah.
And at the stop sign, that's where you see it.
Yeah, can't hear it. That is a bit of a problem with electric mining equipment. You particularly in an underground environment, the sound of the vehicle really helps with the safety. So you'll need to add some sound so
some music on that.
I remember working at North Parks, and we had electric loaders there, and they were scary because you couldn't hear them coming. And so it's interesting that they're very quiet, and it can be a safety problem.
So how long ago was that when you know?
So that was nearly 10 years ago.
So that was already there.
Well over 5. Well, I've been here for 4, so nearly 10 years ago. Electric mining equipment in North Parks in New South Wales. So that's what I'm saying. It's already there. The technology's been there for so long, and it's no excuse.
Yeah, I think going forward, there's less and less opportunities for people not to do that, because I think and again, it comes from awareness, right? And I think news like that travels so much faster now, where people will start asking the question, and technology is caught up to a point where it's like you said, it's almost a sin not to look at that because it's a driving force for lowering your operating costs, which is it's long run, which is a good thing for shareholders, right? So, going forward, Blackstone is heading to the DFS as we speak. What's the time frame? Are we close?
Yeah, so DFS mid next year. So, and that's all on track. So, we've got another 9 months to go, which is great, and that's a really like being an engineer by trade. That's a really exciting period for me. I love exploration. I love drilling holes and finding stuff, and I've been doing that for 4 years now. But for me, it's really exciting to really see those studies come together, the economics that come out of them, and then the excitement around the funding and bringing the partners in, and then going and building something. It's been a while since I built something, which is, so I'm really excited to get back to my roots, which was mining engineering, and actually go and build something. It's been a long time.
So for the sort of more sort of newer investors, the DFS obviously is basically putting all your numbers on the table and say, this thing works and this is how much it's going to cost. From there, going forward to breaking ground and things like that, or first delivery to your customer, what would they be thinking of? Are they thinking 2-3 years, or are they thinking?
No, it's an 18-month process from there.
Okay.
So final investment decision will be soon after the definitive feasibility study. So the idea of the definitive feasibility study is to bring in the funding, and that's why we've engaged our debt advisors already. So we've got Bernvoir and the Korean Development Bank as our debt advisors. So they're working with us through this DFS stage to make sure the DFS is bankable. So, and then we bring in the debt, we bring in the partners, and then we bring in the equity, and then we go. So it's not long after the completion of the definitive feasibility study, within the next 9 months, we're going on with it straight after that.
So for those guys to be sort of ready, I would assume that some people must be doing their homework even now, right? To get to that point where they can say, because no one of that scale would then make a decision so quickly.
Yeah.
So is that something that's really happening now for Blackstone? Like people.
So it's fair to say we've got more interest in this downstream refinery than we've ever had. We've lost count how many people in the data room right now, and that ranges from all different types. It's cathode manufacturers, it's battery manufacturers, it's car manufacturers. They're all worried. Their words are, our nickel situation is dire. We are worried about how we're actually going to find and produce these vehicles because we don't have enough nickel locked up. So it's a serious situation for them. I wouldn't like to be in their position right now.
It's good for you though.
It's great for us, and so we want to lock in our partners over the next few months, or not lock them in, but at least show the market who they are, and then we can move forward, and they can be a part of this pilot plan and the definitive feasibility study. They can actually have input as well. So we're working very hard behind the scenes to sort of at least have a pretty good idea of what the final joint venture consortium will look like.
I mean, a couple of coffee Samsos before you sort of mentioned that, maybe even more than two, that there's about the issue with your nickel supply and your sort of partners, or the guys that your joint venture partners and things like were saying to you that there is a real problem and we need this sorted out. And I think that must have been more than 12 months ago we had that conversation. What's the situation now? When you say it's bad, is it many times more?
Yeah, it's much worse, and but it's only going to get worse over the next 12 months. That's why I say I feel really sorry for these groups, because they've come out and said, oh yeah, we'll build this many electric vehicles, we'll sink all this capital. We've built as a industry. There's 100 gigafactories or whatever the number is. None of them know where they're getting the nickel from.
Yeah.
And so now the nickel price starts rising. Those guys are in serious trouble now, because they've said, oh yeah, we'll get nickel, don't worry about it. And then all of a sudden nickel price goes up, there is no nickel, and they don't have a business. So and that's where the OEMs come in, and so the smart OEMs are now going, okay, well, we'll sort this out. So the smart OEMs are going straight to the miners and they're locking it in, and we're going to see a lot more of that.
I mean, this is where I always said that where you guys are is actually an advantage against a disadvantage, because you're in where the market is. And all those guys in Korea, in well, I don't know so much China, Japan, all this kind of stuff, and they must be knocking at your doors, or have knocked them down at this point in time. Because even Thailand's a car manufacturer now, not to say even Vietnam, right? So how are you guys going to sift through this? Because, you know, when you have one guy talking to you about doing stuff, it's an easy conversation. When you have 10 of them knocking on your door, must be a complicated process.
Yeah, and that's why there's only so much you can do on the Zoom calls. And so I'm heading up to Seoul in about a month's time, and so we'll chat to everyone, and it's a much easier conversation than a Zoom call. So, but really, all it comes down to who's the highest bidder, who writes the largest check, because funding is everything to us as a junior. Who writes the best check or the highest value check at the best terms for the Blackstone shareholders, and so that's business. So we'll see how that plays out.
You taking your flags with you?
We'll see, but
you need a spare pen.
It'll be it'll be good to finally get up there again. It'll be my first international trip since COVID. It's great just to get up there and drink some soju maybe or two, and just really catch up with them all, because it's been a long time since we were face to face. So it's exciting times, and hopefully we can give them some confidence that we can help their situation, because it is dire, as I said. So they are really worried about where they're going to get it from, and we can be a major part of the supply issue.
I guess, you know, we can joke about it, but I think at the end of the day, everyone's got to be on par and working with each other, because, you know, they need you as bad as you need them in some way. Yep. So that sort of level playing field has to be achieved in some ways, right?
Yeah.
Look, you know, the whole Blackstone story is a fantastic one. I think going back to, you know, our first little coffee with Samso back 2019 to now, I think the story's always been the same, right? I remember you guys got this project and you said, this is what we're going to do, and we are almost delivering it at the end, right? Pretty close. Mid next year, you're saying, is the DFS?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your shareholders? Are they calling you King Scotty yet?
No, we're down at 35 cents. They were saying I was the opposite, but it turns pretty quick, and I think finally we've got some good sell side analysts coverage as well, and that helps because it's one thing me banging on about it, but now we've got 5 or 6 strong sell side research analysts. They're all industry experts themselves, and they've made a call and they've said yes, these guys are on track, and they're saying $1 to $1.90. So that's independent. Obviously, brokers do their thing, but it's independent analysis that's saying, okay, these guys are on track, so we'll cover it now, and so that's helped. But we're definitely not. I said the other day we might be the Burger Kings of nickel because of what you said, but it's it was a long way to go, so we're definitely not anywhere near where we want to be yet.
Look, you know, not to jinx anything, I think you know the package that you guys have is quite solid. If you were just downstream and you had to bring in your own feed, I think you would be, well, probably in a good position, but not as good as here, where you're one whole package, right? You have your own feed. If you need more, you seek out more feed. But Scott, look, it's been great. The whole series, I think it's done really well. I was really surprised how everything linked together and everything. It worked well from you know, marketing it, which is, I think it's, at the end of the day, you could say that's the sort of the cream, in the sense that that's where the message gets out. The rest of the guys make sure the foundation's there, doesn't fall over. And obviously, you know, getting the message out is you and the marketing team, I guess, in some ways. Thanks for your time. I think it's been fantastic. As I said, guys, definitely stick out Scott. He's the LinkedIn man. He will answer all questions. Any last words?
No, I think just thanks for the support, Noel, because you've been a big part of our story since the start, and you've really helped get the story out there. So thanks to Samso, and do another one soon.
All right, great. All right, thanks, Scott.